And we're back. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for still watching. Has it been that boring? I hope not. Welcome to a B2B webinar about the movie theater industry. If you subscribe to this thinking a CinemaCon webinar would be just talking about studio presentations, you're actually in luck because that's exactly what we're going to do for 10-15 minutes. After that, it's going to be movie theater executives talking about the industry. So if you're into that, keep watching. If you're not, you got 15 minutes where you're going to have good content. So let's dive right into it, Rebecca.
Yes.
The studio presentations, what we liked, what exhibitors responded to in the audience. Mm-hmm. Let's start with the first studio presentation of the week. Sony opening night. We already talked about that reception that Sony got, but we really have to talk about the two titles that stood out from that presentation. Mm-hmm. Let's start with Spiderman No Way Home. What was your take of the reception that it received at Caesar's Palace?
Really great reception. Just you could tell that they appreciated having that new content. And just from my own perspective, I mean, something that Sony discussed is they are really building their Sony Spider-Man universe. They're building their own franchise out of this, and they've taken the time to do it. We're talking Spider-Man No Way Home. They have Morbius with Jared Leto. They have Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and then the sequel to the animated Into the Spider-Verse. So they really are, they're building this franchise, and it's been a long time coming, but it really looks like it's coming to fruition. So
it seems like a little bit of, I don't want to call it divorce because it's very well structured, but it's a stepping away from that Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It's a separation.
It's a separation. It seems like that's the case. We don't know for a fact, of course, but the pieces are in play. There's a structure in play here for Sony to not have to go through Disney to make more of this Spider-Man IP that after a certain point, it was a little bit tired. We had seen a couple of instances where they tried to make it work. Some worked, some didn't. The Marvel Cinematic Universe through Disney helped reinvigorate the Spider-Man franchise. Now that it's there, we're seeing some baby steps for Sony really to take it on its own direction without Disney or the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Well, they're integrating Alfred Molina as Doc Ock from the Raimi Spider-Man films. I mean, they're going back and bringing in Easter eggs from earlier iterations of the franchise, so I'm really excited to see where that goes.
You know where I wanted to go? Topher Grace's Venom. Bring him back. We didn't get enough Topher Grace's Venom 10, 15, 20 years. I don't know when that thing came out.
Don't speak that into the world. Don't bring that in. Speaking of franchises, it didn't get the social buzz that the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer got. There hasn't been as much discussion about it, but there was actually a complete full screening of Ghostbusters Afterlife with director Jason Reitman and producer Ivan Reitman, who of course is Jason's father and directed the original Ghostbusters. There was a full screening of that. No spoilers except to say that it's good. It's funny. It mixes the old and the new without leaning too heavily on nostalgia or leaning too heavily on we're going to mix this up. It really knows what it is. It knows what the value and the spirit of the original franchise. It's a solid one. I really had a good time with it.
A lot of the exhibitors I spoke to after the screening responded very favorably to the film. So from the exhibition community, the people that we polled, spoke to, we always like to get reactions from exhibitors here at the event. A solid reaction to this film. You might not see the social media buzz about it, like Rebecca said, that Spider-Man captured, but the entire movie was screened, and I haven't heard anything but positive reactions from it here.
People weren't walking out. I mean, it was full. It was packed. You know, you put anything MCU related, it's gonna get that Twitter buzz.
Absolutely.
Regardless. But Ghostbusters Afterlife is a good film. I liked it.
So let's move on to the second studio presentation of the week. MGM United Artists. A couple of titles there. Let's start with a big one. The big bit of news here. MGM studio boss Michael DeLuca coming on stage and confirming No Time to Die is keeping its October theatrical release date. It's not moving. It's sticking to theaters. It's going to open. we're excited. We were even more excited after we saw a 10-minute action set piece from this title. I don't want to get too much into hyperbole. I've seen every James Bond movie. I have. I really have.
I've seen Moonraker where the pigeon does a triple take.
That's actually not a very good one at all. No, you worked at the bottom end of it. But I can tell you, this one that we just saw the footage of, No Time to Die, very far away from the Moonraker days. There's a car chase sequence there that is, in my opinion, the best car chase sequence I've seen in a Bond movie since Goldfinger. I'm excited to see it in the context of the entire film. Great reactions from exhibitors here at the event to No Time to Die. Great excitement. MGM handling that title domestically. Universal tackling those international rights. I think that's a great move. It's one of the things that we were talking about in one of our podcast episodes earlier. There were two titles that moved early in the pandemic. Trolls World Tour from Universal, which was an important title because that opened the door to a lot of the conversations we're having about exclusivity, about PVOD. It opened the door to a lot of discussions and conversations of how to release movies during the pandemic.
And No Time to Die, which has gotten pushed. At one point, heavily rumored that it was going to be, purchased by Amazon and put on streaming. Not the case. Didn't happen.
It's been theatricals from second one, and we have that confirmation. Any rumors that No Time to Die wasn't going to have a theatrical release have been shot down since the start, and we heard it here ourselves from the head of MGM. There is no way this title hits streaming, and at this point, they're committing to that October release, a very important indication of where we're going. Now, that got a lot of buzz. There were a couple of other titles that looked interesting there. House of Gucci, Lady Gaga, Ridley Scott, ridiculous Italian accents, people drinking espresso in fancy clothes.
Enormous social media buzz. I trust Ridley Scott. It looks like it's going to be very fun. Another one I liked, Joe Wright's Cyrano, a musical version of Cyrano de Bergerac, starring Peter Dinklage. I was going to say, I was thinking, a different sort of film from an action, blockbuster like No Time to Die is a costume drama like Cyrano. But really, I would argue that No Time to Die is also, Bond films are also costume dramas.
Oh yeah, no one dresses like that. No one can possibly afford to dress like that.
But it's a good slate of films that we saw, and I think critically a diverse slate of films in terms of different types of films, more adult skewing films, more action-y films, Cyrano does look a little more niche.
Yeah.
It's a musical version of Cyrano de Bergerac.
But you know what? That MGM slate also included some Orion titles. And from the look of things, it looks like that Orion brand from MGM is going to play, and I'm really assuming here, just judging on that presentation, but from that MGM presentation, Orion looks to be playing more of a focus features to Universal role to MGM. So we're seeing a lot of original titles. We're seeing some very interesting, let's say, niche genre titles in that Orion brand. So I'm very curious to see how MGM handles these theatrical releases. You have the big No Time to Die coming out from the big MGM brand, the lion logo at the front, and then you've got some maybe quieter titles to fill out that release schedule coming in through Orion. So that's definitely on our radar. Let's move on to the next studio presentation, Warner Brothers. Rebecca, you weren't able to head out to that presentation at the Coliseum, which, by the way, you can see there in the background. That's the Coliseum.
That's real. That's not CG.
No, not yet. We can't afford that yet. But I did go to that Warner Brothers presentation. Some interesting things there. I've only seen a scene from Dune, Denis Villeneuve, Timothée Chalamet in a video presentation introducing Dune. I only saw that one clip. It looked gorgeous. Rebecca, you've actually seen the whole thing. You saw Dune months ago.
Yes.
You can't talk about it.
No, I'm NDA'd up, but I will say this at a very political set. I will say it as delicately. I'm not trying to insult anybody. If you can see this movie on the big screen and you choose to watch it on your TV, that is not the correct call.
That's very diplomatic.
This is a big screen
That's
movie.
more diplomatic than Denis Villeneuve has been, which is great. He's been saying a bunch of cool, spicy stuff in the press about his commitment to watching Dune on a big screen. As I mentioned, he introduced a clip here. He was a lot more diplomatic than you were there, actually. It was a very measured statement from Denis Villeneuve. Yeah. It looked like he was reading out of a piece of paper. I don't know if he was or not, but it was a very measured approach in that presentation, asking audiences politely, hey, you should see this in the cinemas. So yeah. Dune, we saw an early look at that. You've seen movie, the film.
Another
Absolutely.
movie that has posters plastered all over Caesars, clearly an important title for Warner's.
Now, one we haven't seen a lot of public marketing for is actually a movie that we got a sneak peek of during the CinemaCon presentation from Warner Brothers. The next Matrix installment, Matrix Resurrections, if I remember correctly. They put that flash screen with the subtitles very quickly. Mm-hmm. Rebecca, it was a good trailer. There's a little bit of nostalgia there. Everyone was excited to see what was going on. And it's something that we spoke about in the last segment. There's a lot of buzz to want to find out more about the Matrix. This isn't an IP that's coming back to see if it can connect. I think there's an engaged audience for the Matrix. And I think that was reflected in the reactions that I heard from exhibitors at Caesars Palace. So those were the highlights for us from Warner Brothers. Moving on to Wednesday morning's presentations, Neon had a breakfast presentation where of course, we know Neon, they're not going to be the big blockbuster studio. Neon, which really is a new kid on the block, comparatively speaking.
But they are going to get that Oscar.
They already have one in the bag.
They have that right out the gate.
They brought a foreign language film, Parasite, won the Best Picture Academy Award. So don't sleep on Neon. They've been able to get titles and overperform with them. We got to see what they have for the award season this year. So refreshing to talk about the award season. We didn't get to have that last year.
No, not
These
really.
are the three titles that they had going on. They opened with a trailer from Titan, the Palme d'Or winning movie out of Cannes. They followed that up with a trailer from Flea, which they're premiering during that awards corridor. That movie played in Sundance to great critical acclaim. And the last thing we saw, Spencer, directed by Chilean director Pablo Larraín, with Kristen Stewart playing Princess Diana.
Cannot wait.
That's going to be an interesting title.
Twitter.
Yeah, I know. On Twitter, there's another title. There's a lot of buzz for that. So Neon showing us an exclusive scene here at CinemaCon. Well received, I think, in the balance of things. Again, these aren't the movies that are going to make $100, $200, $300 million, but they play an important role, and that's a big takeaway that we've had this week.
It reminds me of something that Adam Aron said when he was presenting the NATO Marquee Award, which is that he really, well, no surprise, he really values theatrical exclusivity from the CEO of AMC, who figures. But one of the reasons he gave for this is that when films do have theatrical exclusivity, they can be a part of the cultural conversation. They can be a lasting part of it. Parasite didn't have that Oscar out the gate. They had to find their audience. These films from Neon have to find their audience. And when they are allowed to do so, they can be enormously successful, as opposed to, oftentimes when a film goes to Netflix, there's a brief flurry of conversation, and then the internet's onto something else.
No, not to pick on Netflix. I think it's just streaming platforms as a whole, right? I think it's hard to cut through the noise. Yeah, and I think that's one of the big reasons why this event is so important. We were speaking about that in the earlier segment. That you can eventize marketing campaigns with a live event and launch it. That's such an important component of having CinemaCon in 2021. That value of being able to bring the industry together and start showcasing these new titles. So even when we talk about a specialty distributor like Neon, there's buzz. There's people that want to see these movies. There's definitely an audience that's waiting to see them in theaters. That brings us to a studio like Universal that has the big brand studio with the big titles and the specialty division with Focus. Now let's step away for a little bit. We have to explain the Universal Studio presentation because it really was fantastic. We have to be very honest about it. It's such a challenge and a big question mark we had heading into this year's event. How does CinemaCon studio presentations work when it's not really viable to bring talent to present these things in person?
Understandably so.
Absolutely. It's a huge challenge, but I think Universal figured it out. Rebecca, can you walk us through Universal's approach to their studio presentation?
It was a really wonderful, innovative, well-produced thing that they came up with. So they have stars from films from the upcoming slates, people like Matthew McConaughey, Lupita Nyong'o, Jennifer Lopez, spoke a bit about those films, but then what they did is they kicked it to someone from a theater that they have a personal connection to. For Jennifer Lopez, it was a theater she went to a lot in the Bronx. For Matthew McConaughey,
Bronx Grand Concourse from Showcase Cinemas.
Yes.
I'm not going to forget to call them out. But yeah, I mean, every single star.
Matthew McConaughey going hard for Alamo in Austin, of course.
Right.
Keep
Hometown.
Austin weird.
Sure.
Respecting the theaters and bringing in theater employees to introduce these films. And Daniel, before we get into these specific films, I'd like to share, another major takeaway that I have had from CinemaCon so far is a real respect, a real appreciation and acknowledgement of movie theater employees at every level. Adam Aaron gave the NATO Marquis Award to collectively movie theater employees, with 5 of them appearing in person to accept the award on behalf of the community. At another presentation, Will Rogers and their Pioneers Assistance Fund, which has done spectacular work throughout the pandemic to provide much needed funds to furloughed movie theater employees. And there have been panels and discussions about things like HR and the way to hire and retain high performing employees. And it's something, as with Windows, something that was kind of in the works for a while, but it took a turning point like this to really spark necessary conversations. We know that over the past decades, turnover in the exhibition industry has been steadily increasing.
It's so difficult, that retention aspect, especially with the economic conditions right now and the reopening.
And then COVID hit, and it's even worse. So
you have to rebuild staff from an hourly perspective to really the executive and then the mid-level ranks. It's a big challenge for the industry.
So there are real conversations happening here at CinemaCon, both facilitated by NATO and just between individuals, about how can we reassess, how can we change our standard operating procedure when it comes to hiring, when it comes to retention, necessary conversations to have, and CinemaCon has really helped those conversations move ahead.
Yeah, that's the industry aspect of this show that really doesn't make sense to report really on the regular B2C press, how movie theaters run their operations when it comes to staffing, when it comes to retaining employees. But it's a real topic here because it's a struggle that we've seen a lot of circuits and independent cinemas go through. How do you figure that staffing equation?
And not just exhibitors, every industry, of course.
Right.
We're not. It's not
an exception here where exhibition's at. Now, it's important to say that because that aspect of the cinema worker was such a big part of the Universal presentation. So let's go right into the movies that really stood out from Universal. I'm going to start with Halloween Kills. I saw the original Halloween at home on VHS. It scared the crap out of me. I was like 12 years old. And every time there's a new Halloween title in the movie theaters, and there's been several reboots, I always go to watch them.
You just hear that John Carpenter, and it
just
chills.
Fantastic. And this one looked really good. We got to see some footage. I love that multi-generational approach that we've had since David Gordon Green came onto the franchise, gave it a fresh new perspective. Jamie Lee Curtis introducing the footage and also bringing in someone from her favorite theater in Ketchum, Idaho, the Magic Lantern Cinema. It was a great little moment. Halloween Kills, that's still on the schedule for October from Universal.
A new trailer, by the way. We saw a lot of new trailers at that presentation.
Absolutely. Another bit, well, we didn't see a trailer, but we did see a little bit of footage. Rebecca, you stuck around for this one. Jurassic World Dominion from Universal. What was the reaction in the room to the footage that played?
I mean, it was the big finish. I mean, you left before because you thought it was over.
Well, I had to hit a deadline.
You had to hit, well,
Yeah, some of
or
us have to
that.
write here. Yeah, no.
No, but it really, they spoke about how it's kind of, you have the old cast returning from the original Jurassic Park, Jeff Goldblum, Laura Dern, Sam Neill, joining the new Jurassic World family. It kind of seemed full circle. It was some, behind the scenes conversations and talking heads. The reception was really, honestly fantastic. So that's one that, who isn't excited about dinosaurs eating people?
That's a good spectacle to see on a big screen.
Only on a big screen, not in real life.
Another spectacle that I like to see on big screen are period Viking dramas, especially when they're directed by Robert Eggers. In my opinion, one of the most compelling filmmakers today. Rebecca, we're big fans of his work. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, we've been looking forward to this movie. We actually got to see a very early look of what he's shooting. He's still in production. What did you read from that Focus Features presentation that looked into The Northman from Robert Eggers?
I mean, I read that I'm going to be spending a lot of money probably buying several tickets to see the movie several times. No, seriously, I mean, Robert Eggers is not done with the movie, but he put together a trailer for the CinemaCon audience specifically. It looks gorgeous, as we've come to expect from his films. It looks exciting. It has Alexander Skarsgård playing a Viking. Who doesn't want that? It's spectacular. And it also features Anya Taylor-Joy, who was in The Witch, and who was actually in another Focus film that we saw a new trailer for.
Right,
that being Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho. Edgar Wright, an extremely vocal advocate for movie theaters, for the movie theater experience. Another film where the poster is plastered all over CinemaCon. We've seen it so many times over the course of the last few days. They appear to be really going hard on marketing this one, and it looks great. It looks like a nice, twisty ghost thriller.
Yeah, it looks exciting, and you know what? And there was some footage from the filmmaker introducing the movie, and something he said really struck me. Mm-hmm. He said that he was the one that pushed for that October release in theaters. Mm-hmm. He wanted to make sure Last Night in Soho confirmed and hit movie theaters this fall. That's great to see. It's great to see filmmakers stand up and say, this is my opinion on how I want to see these films. We've seen it at studios like Warner Brothers, mm-hmm, through filmmakers like Christopher Nolan and Denis Villeneuve. We've seen it at Focus, obviously with a filmmaker like Edgar Wright. I think we'll be seeing it a little bit more because the conversation that we're having right now around windows is also a conversation that we're seeing Hollywood talent having with studios, mm-hmm, and filmmakers asking themselves how they want their films to be seen. It's not just a conversation about, say, audience preferences, mm-hmm, or what is good for exhibition or distribution or somebody's corporate parent. It goes down to the content creators. And we've seen that with a studio that didn't present at CinemaCon this year, but that is right now trying to figure it out.
Yes.
Disney, as we know, wasn't present here. They screened some footage. They screened the entire thing, an advent screening of Shang-Chi, Legend of Ten Rings. But it's interesting. It's interesting when we step back and see that Disney is still a big studio that has made a lot of money for movie theaters, mm-hmm, that we know
has built franchises, multiple franchises.
That we know there can be big mutual benefits here, mm-hmm, but it's still a place where the filmmakers are trying to find the next step with the studio on determining what makes sense in the sense of a release strategy. Mm-hmm. They're not alone. Exhibition still has those question marks. It's a pity that Disney didn't make the time and effort to send a video message, mm-hmm, or some sort of involvement in the event here, mm-hmm, to at least reach out and start a conversation. I'm sure those conversations are happening. Disney and cinemas are a combination that I think is, mm-hmm, mutually beneficial. Unfortunately, It's not a conversation that took place at this event
Yeah.
this year.
And you know, we've been discussing what have been our takeaways from CinemaCon 2021. And honestly, I think my absolute alpha #1 takeaway is, with so many things in flux, with so many necessary conversations happening, my takeaway is, I wonder what CinemaCon 2022 is going to be like. In April, I wonder where we will be then.
In many ways, this event feels like an important dress rehearsal for a bigger event that's happening in 8 months, when all our colleagues in the international markets can come, when more talent, hopefully, with the situation the way it is, evolves and can participate. It was a crucial step, I think, to where we are as an industry, for distribution, for exhibition, for vendors to come together and chart out a path for the next couple of months. I think, like you, CinemaCon 2022 is going to be an opportunity to chart out a path for the coming years.
And we will see you at CinemaCon 2022. Hopefully more of you in person and not through a screen. But we do thank you so much for... Everyone has screen fatigue, but we really do appreciate it. And we hope that you have enjoyed this actual in-person box office live webinar.
I know.
Strange.
It was kind of weird. I
Yeah.
think it worked.
I'm like, who are you?
I know. I cursed like 5 minutes in. It was terrible. I think like people stopped watching. All right, we're going to stop the camera now. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate the support.
Have
And
a lovely day.
Thank